Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. It's me, Phil. Lilith is not here. Will is here. And of course, we've been doing a lot of guests lately. We've got a very special guest. We're going to Mr. Benjamin Raab. How are you, sir?
I'm great, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
We were going to talk some comics. We will talk some comics, but then we are excited because Will and I, we jump on every week to do a Green Lantern podcast. Of course, we were talking about your run from back in the day. But every week when we jump on, Will and I, it's like, did you watch Quantum Leap this week? Did you watch Quantum Leap this week? And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this man works on the show, so
this man is the executive producer of the show and
writer. Yes,
co-executive producer.
Okay,
the ladder below, the rung below. It's not executive producer.
You know what? This Will tortured me because when the season premiered, like he was traveling for work, so I was like, "Did you watch the premiere yet?" He's like, "No," and I just wanted to be like, 3 years. They haven't seen it.
Let's spoil it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that was a really interesting move because it throws some roadblocks up between Ben and Addison, and I think another, at least from this side of the seat, it gives you guys a chance to rotate in the other members of the team, so you get character moments between, like this last episode, the heavy episode that we were just talking about. You get all those interactions between Ben and Magic, which worked out really well. And I assume, and I have no knowledge, but I assume that we're probably going to get additional interactions with maybe other members of the team coming up. You can neither confirm or deny. I know, so
I'll just have to tune in and see.
He just wanted to spend the week with Ernie Hudson. That's why. That's all that was about.
Well, listen, I mean, we at the bare minimum, we at least get to spend a couple of days, with him and the rest of the crew back at the headquarters, because that's sort of, when we shoot out on our stages, those tend to be, less scenes per episode. It's sort of our B stories that connect with the Leap and everything. But so we get them for a couple of days and get to sort of, be with the crew, and then the rest of the time it's Ben and the guest cast and Addison.
Nice. Well, and that must be really, just kind of awesome to be able to be on set. You mentioned that earlier. This is I wrote this, and now I'm giving it to the actors, and you get to see them perform it, which just has got to be awesome. I mean, there's no other way to describe it, right?
Yeah, no, it's incredibly gratifying, and all the time they make it better than you wrote it. I mean, that's the way they breathe life into it, and they do things that, you see it in your head as you're writing it and you put it down on paper, but it again, it's their breath, their existence that sort of gives it life, and it's always pretty amazing to see and incredibly gratifying. And I'm very lucky to be working on a show that shoots in Los Angeles. I mean, every show I've worked on up until this show, I mean, I've been in television for 15 years, was shot somewhere else. It was, Warehouse 13 was 5 seasons in Toronto. The Berlantiverse shows were all up in Vancouver. When I was on Legacies, that was in Georgia. So like this, when we got the break after when Legacies wrapped and we started working on this show, it was like, I wanted to take a break, and I said to my writing partner Derek Hughes, I'm like, we got to tell our agents, like, whatever show comes next, I just want it to be local and like first season. Like, I don't want to jump on a show midstream like we've done for the past several years. And lo and behold, Quantum Leap came along, and it was shooting in LA and its first season, and it really worked out, and it's been wonderful ever since.
Nice. So I assume you guys, you and your writing partner, have probably since you started day one, put together a story Bible. I mean, the whole schmear, right? The whole enchilada.
Well, the original show creators who started, with us in season 1 and then left midstream, Stephen Lillian and Brian Winbrandt, who hired us, along with Martin Giro, our executive producer now, they had already worked out a lot of stuff in advance. So, but because the episode that was originally shot as the pilot eventually became episode 6, we had to sort of re-break a new pilot and a new sort of long story for the season. I mean, again, they already came in with a lot of the material, and it was just us sort of, like, they had all the characters, they had their backstories, they had a lot of that, but it was about us contributing to that and sort of populating, the series with the things that eventually, whether it's taken from the old series or new material specifically for this one, how could we sort of find ways to organically work them together and make this a true sequel, not a reboot. It's never been a reboot. It's always kind of been a sequel.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, so when Will mentioned being on set and well, two things. One is there a lot of editing as you're doing it, or is it pretty much set in stone once it gets in the performer's hands, or?
No, changes can happen on the fly all the time. That's one of the reasons why you saw this town shut down during the writer's strike, is because our presence, for those of us who are lucky enough to be able to go to set, right? Local shows, obviously it's a lot easier, but shows that would have to travel to other locations, a lot of times the writers weren't lucky. Studios might not pay to send them, and therefore the changes that happen where an actor bumps on a line because it's too much in the mouth, or it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't track with something from my character that I did as an improv in a previous episode that you haven't seen because the cut hasn't come in, and therefore you don't know. Like, we have to be there to help make sure that it all tracks, that it all works, and that if something needs to be changed on the fly, we are present and able to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I know that was one of the really important parts of the strike, was to make sure that writers are there. And I'm glad you guys got everything. You probably should have asked for more, technically, but
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I mean, I'm grateful for what our negotiating committee achieved, and it was no small feat.
But yeah, I mean, this Raymond Lee, I mean, who plays Ben, again, it was just like with Scott Bakula back in the day. I'm like, you got to be a pretty impressive actor to pull out that lead role, because it's like you're acting with a different cast every single episode, and it's like, okay, well, this episode, you might be an 18-year-old guy. Next time, oh, you might be a 62-year-old woman. It's all your parameters change from week to week. It's impressive.
Well, yeah, and that was something. That was something interesting. About the original show, is that it was really just a two-man show. It was Al and Sam, and I really like that it's expanded now. There's a larger team, and we get to see, not only the lead but also home, a lot more, which I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, we weren't just going to do the original series again. Then what's the point?
Yeah,
it's been done. We've seen it.
Yeah.
And I think audiences sort of, tastes have changed. Styles of television has changed. So much has happened between, the late 80s, early 90s when the original was on, and now, that I think we've found a lot of times, a lot of the decisions that are made because of budgetary reasons, because of production reasons, and we're able to do a little bit more, and therefore that gives us a little bit more leeway. And again, to make this show unique, putting a love story at the heart of it, really, I mean, that's it opened the world up so much more, and giving him a team. I mean, again, you always referred to Gushy and everybody back at HQ, so it's like, why not see those people? Why not see the ones that are actually doing the work? And I don't know, it's kind of a family show, and they are his family. So
yeah. Well, and you guys, you haven't shied away from. I mean, with Ian's character on there, you've made LGBTQ stuff front and center. You've made race front and center, like the last show. I mean, my wife and I have been rewatching the original Quantum Leap recently, and she likes to point out the casual misogyny of the period.
Very casual.
And,
a little too casual, I think.
Yeah, but this, this really is, you're right, a sequel, and it's an update, and it's cutting edge in a lot of really important social issues. Now, again, late 80s, early 90s, I think the original show did a lot for, a lot of different things as well, but 30 years on, it seems kind of quaint, right?
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, we, look, just referring to One Night in Koreatown, is sort of the spiritual successor to Black on White on Fire, written by Deborah Pratt from the original series, right? That dealt with the Watts riots. Again, different time period, different race relation, different story, but it set a tone for what the show does and can do. That one, The Color of Right, both written by Deborah. You know, vis-a-vis, racial relations, we got to follow in those footsteps, and we got to do the best we possibly can, just like they were doing the best they possibly could. So no, you're absolutely right. Like we tend not to shy away from things. We don't want to make it just be about issues every week, like but we always try to find a way to make something relevant, and there's what we refer to as the 4 H's of the show, which are it's heart, humor, history, and hope. And so when we sit down to break these stories, we think of those things and try to, sometimes we're a little heavier on one thing or lighter on the other, but those 4 things are always there.
Yeah, because I think it before we jumped on, you said, the next episode in 2 weeks will be more lighter episode. I'm like, I hope so. I mean, we got the crushing stuff with Ben and Addison last week, and then we got this episode. Magic's in his alcoholism. It's like, oh, you're killing us there.
Yeah, of course.
So is there like a personal thing here for you? Because I saw you did post that, about how much this episode meant to you and like your co-writer, or is it just, just all the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it?
It's that. I mean, look, I am neither part of the Black community nor the Korean community, so I can't speak to the characters and their lived existences as we try to sort of portray them on screen. My writing partner is Black and Japanese. He's not Korean, but he's part Asian. He's from California. I'm not from California. I wasn't here when those were happening. I was in college. Our director is a Black woman, Tamika Miller. So she had a very specific point of view on the story that, even though again she wasn't here, she related to it on a lot of many different levels. The reason this episode even existed was because Raymond Lee, our lead, suggested, when we asked him, like, hey, what time periods would you love to jump into? Like, you're on set with the actors, and you're like, okay, let's, think ahead. We're gonna have to pitch more episodes later in the season or next season. And we were on set in season 1 for our second episode. Derek and I wrote Paging Dr. Song. Just said to Ray, like, what would you like to do? And he said, this is something I told Brian and Steven. I'll tell you guys. I really want to do Koreatown during the riots. I want to see it through the Korean experience of that event. And so we're like, okay, great. Filed it away. We rolled right in from season 1 into season 2 without even a day's break because there was fear of a strike. And so the pitching happened very early, and it was like, okay, who's got ideas for what we could do this season? And we pitched that one. And Martin and Dean Church Harris, our other showrunner, were totally down with it. Studio and network were down with it. So because Ray had that lived experience of being a kid growing up in Koreatown, who's his mother had I think it's called the Times Cafe. She had to shut down for 6 days, and she was home for 6 days, and he was young enough that he didn't quite understand what's going on. What we eventually found out while we were shooting it was that we knew Ernie Hudson was from Michigan, and so we sort of gave him that bit of backstory that, maybe he was in Detroit before going off to Vietnam, or on leave from Vietnam. And what we found out through our director Tamika was that she had a conversation with him about it. He actually was in Detroit in 1967 when the Long Hot Summer happened. So he lived. So again, we're like, that's an important historical moment that could pertain to this character. It works out with the timeline of Magic's existence, and to discover that our actor really had been through it. I mean, so for all those reasons, this is what was very special and important to us.
Nice.
Wow. So I again, Ernie Hudson's just such a good actor. You just think, oh yeah, he's just acting, but yeah, it's the personal experience that. Okay.
So this was episode 5. Are we getting a 22 episode season this time out? Or?
No, we're a 13 episode season.
Okay.
The first 8 episodes which basically leads up to what we call our mid-season finale. Were shot. 6.5 of them were shot before the strike happened, and then like part of 7 and all of 8 were shot the very beginning of the strike, like those first couple of weeks, and then the crew finally got their hiatus, and we went dark. We have 5 more episodes that we are in the process of writing, hoping that the actors get their fair deal so that we can all start come back to set and play together again. But season 2 will likely only be 13. Fingers crossed for more for next season.
Well, in a perfect world, how many seasons would you want this to run? I mean, I'm sure you don't. I'm not asking about the story, okay? But if there's a story arc, would it be a 5-season, 7-season? Would this still be running when my granddaughter is in college, or?
It's a fair question. I mean, it is a show with a very what's the right word? Reusable is not the right word, but it's kind of an evergreen premise. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. It is something that the notion of someone going into the accelerator and righting past wrongs. That's eternal. So I believe it could last for a very long time. I mean, I know the reality of television is that things do have a shelf life. But I feel like we've hit a really great stride this season, and I think there's just, I don't know, it's just I'm having one of the best work experiences I've ever had, working with some of the best people I've ever worked with, and I would really like to see them get to do this for as long as they want to do it, as long as I can do it. Happy to be there.
Gotcha.
I mean, we can't get enough. You give us as many episodes as you can, but it's like network TV, the streaming, all of it is it getting more rare to get a 22 episode season? Or it seems like more shows are doing like 13 or, or 16 or whatever.
Even 10.
Yeah. Well, streaming, definitely.
Yeah. No, I mean, the last 20 plus episode show I was on was season 7 of Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Season 3 of Legacies ended up at 20, but only because the pandemic kicked 4 episodes from season 2 into season 3. But yeah, it's becoming a lot rarer, and it's not so common. And I mean, I think there is a little bit of a a lull when you get to sort of like 14, 15, 16 sometimes. If you know you're going to 22 or 23, but like 16 to 18, I think is a real good number for episodes. Like our last season, Quantum Leap was 18 episodes, and I don't feel like there was anyone that sort of felt like, this is just treading water.
Filler. Yeah, it didn't seem like that.
No. Well, yeah, there was a really strong driving plot for that too. With the evil leaper or pseudo evil leaper. Sorry, and everything that was going on, which actually brings up a question for me. The Ian that leapt back to kind of kick things off is now in a timeline that no longer exists because he changed things potentially. At least that's the way I read it.
Right. Mm-hmm. My brain hurts.
Okay. It's time travel.
Literally, and there are, we have some amazing writers on staff, and some who really grok to this stuff like easily, and I'm just going, okay. Regardless of my background in genre, like it's like there's just some things that I'm a lower order of primate, and I will never quite grasp that.
I don't know. I mean, the original reason we reached out to you because you were a comic book writer, so it's like that doesn't strike your comic book writer mind. It's just
again, like I'm aware of it. I get it. Like the scene in Endgame when they listed off all the things and when they're explaining time travel, I'm like, yeah, totally makes perfect sense. You use all these perfect examples, but if you ask me to have a conversation about it, I can't do it.
And again, as a theoretical thing that's never happened before, it's like it's up to interpretation of any writer, right? It's like, okay, it works it works the Back to the Future way. No, it doesn't work that way. No, it works.
So when I was on Warehouse 13, we were doing an episode that had a time travel-ish element to it, And I'll never forget the head of the studio at the time, after, you know, our showrunner laid everything out, explained it, he's like, well, that's not how time travel works. And our showrunner was like, it's not real. So anyway.
Gotcha. So with I mean, we were talking about genre. I mean, and comics in particular. You know, you've written for Marvel, you've written for DC. This have you wanted to go back and do or have you done comics since you've been in Hollywood at that point, or have you been mostly focused on the screenwriting?
Mostly focused on screenwriting and you know, television in particular. It's funny, Derek and I we are working on a comic book right now with Pete Woods, an artist that I worked with on Excalibur ages ago. Listen, this is the perfect segue into talking about my career in comics, isn't it? You know, I started in '93. I was an intern at Marvel. Worked my way up to assistant editor. Was on the X-Men books for 2.5 years. At that time, started, you know, writing freelance, which was like a dream. I mean, dream come true, right? It was literally my dream job because I was an X-Men kid growing up. You know, it was Claremont, Byrne, Cochran, Paul Smith. That was my era, and you know, so to be able to, the reason I even got the job in the X-Men office was because I was working in special projects, which was trading cards and posters and all those things. So under Bob Budiansky and Tom Brevoort and Glenn Greenberg, and they were doing one, like, I think it was the 1994 Fleer X-Men trading card set, and I think it was a painted card set. And my job as the intern was to gather reference for the artists and send it out to the artists. Well, I knew page and panel where to find the right shots, so I was constantly. I mean, I was in that office on the daily, and Bob Harris, you know, saw that I knew what I was talking about, and when it was, you know, it was 1993, so you know, Marvel was still growing, right? This is before the bottom dropped out, and he was about to promote his assistant, and you know, this was an internship, and it was a paid internship, but it was like finite. You have 4 to 6 months to make this work and get hired because the company keeps expanding. If it works out, great. If not, good luck, kid. And lo and behold, you know, the guys in special projects were like, hey, we can hire you. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, all right, a job, that's awesome. It wasn't my dream to work on trading cards and posters, you know. Honestly, like all the comic stuff is happening right here. I want to be a part of that. And then, to my surprise, Don Daly, the Punisher editor at the time, was about to promote his assistant, Tim Toohey, and he was like, "You want to be my assistant?" I'm like, "Ooh, comics." But I don't love the Punisher. It's not really. I was like, okay. And then, like, literally 2 days later, you know, Bob Harris pulled me aside. He's like, you know, walk with me. And we start walking down the hall past the bullpen. He's like, I'm going to promote my assistant, Lisa Patrick. You want to come on into the X-Men office? I was like, yes.
That's the one.
and so that was just, you know, wonder, miracle of miracles, you know.
Nice.
90s X-Men. Oh, that was
I was we were in the middle of the Phalanx Covenant and about to start Age of Apocalypse.
Oh.
I fielded a lot of letters and calls about how dare you cancel my X-Men books. Everybody, it's going to be okay. Just everybody.
4 months. It's just 4 months.
For early to mid 90s, it's like everyone was still learning about the gimmicks. Because I remember when the Death of Superman came out, just like the news reports, I saw a woman crying outside a comic book store saying, "Why they kill Superman? My babies love Superman." And okay.
So then, so after your stint as an editor, you went freelance, right? And I saw some credits for you, like on X-Men, Avengers, and some other Marvel stuff for a while, and then jump ship over to DC.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like So around that time, once I went freelance, that was 97.
Mhm.
Like after I left the X office, I did 6 months as Marvel's first interactive editor, where they were, they launched their AOL site, if you remember that. Remember the discs that were given out at
Oh, yeah.
Comic-Con back in 1996? That was part of my job. It was one of those things I'm like, I don't know if this internet thing's going to take off. So and really, and it was the kind of thing where I was like, I'm not making comics. I'm not doing the thing that I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was cool and all, but like it was so nascent that you couldn't do cool stuff. So I was just like, I got to do something else. And so because I was writing comics at the time, and I was working 20-hour days, like day job at Marvel Online, night job writing comics. I really wanted to devote my energy to being a writer, and so I went freelance and then started making inroads at DC. I forget exactly how I got to them, but the first people that I connected with were Green Lantern editor Kevin Dooley and his assistant Dana Curtin. And they gave me a 10-page story, 8 or 10-page story in one of the first 80-page giant.
Oh, okay.
So that got my feet wet in the DC waters, and yeah, I was writing stuff for Marvel freelance. Did X-Men Alpha Flight and Union Jack with John Cassaday, my good friend. Writing Excalibur. Just it was a lot of here and there. I was always on the books that somehow managed to, we're going to end the run now. I'm like, great.
Spider-Man 2099.
Like Peter David, for whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure why he left those last 2 issues. So someone had to do it, and it fell to me. And it was cool. I got to work with Mike McCone, which was pretty neat.
Awesome.
And then Excalibur, I thought was going to be an ongoing, and that sort of got the plug pulled, and whatever, it's fine. But like by 2000, the year 2000, Marvel was less of an option for me, so I tried to put more energy into DC. There was the changing of the guard. Bob and his sort of regime was sort of removed, and the Marvel Knights sort of came in and kind of took over. And so yeah, I mean, the thing at DC that really solidified things for me, there were 2 things. The first one was the Beast Boy miniseries that I co-wrote with Jeff Johns. Which again, what are the odds of this? I'm on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast. I met Eddie Berganza, the editor, and we both pitched almost identical pitches. Like there were elements in mine that he didn't have, and there were elements in his that I didn't have, but the kind of premise and what they were trying to achieve was sort of the same. And Eddie's Solomonic split the baby was, why don't you guys collaborate on it? And so we did. and that was a blast. And we had such a good time, and we did some other Titan stuff. We even pitched a Titans West series idea that didn't materialize, but was close. So that was that. And then at that time I was pitching ideas to DC, and met Mike Carlin and pitched him a 2-part Legends of the Hawkman story. Well, it was Legends of the DCU, but it was a Hawkman story, set in the Silver Age. That he really liked it, and this was sort of around the time that DC Direct was gearing up to release the Hawkman Hawkgirl 2-pack action figure thing. So let the merchandise drive the editorial. Worked out great for me, because they're like, well, let's not just do 2 issues. Let's turn your premise into a 3-issue prestige miniseries, which awesome. They had an editorial review process at the time where all the senior editors had to sign off on it. And again, this is definitely a massive humble brag, but it was sort of a highlight moment of my career. And where writers were insecure and needy, so this was exactly the kind of thing I needed to see. When I got Mike, or someone, I think it was Mike, sent me the review sheet, and he had his thoughts. Dan Raspler at the time had his thoughts, and then Denny O'Neil wrote just a single line, which was best take on the Hawks ever. And
Oh,
so, like,
from the
right,
movie
like, okay,
itself.
yeah,
Jeez.
dead on dead, right? Like I can die now. It's all good. I don't have to write it. Don't let
Yeah.
me do that and ruin his impression of it.
Yeah.
But that was a huge project for me, and that I got to work with Michael Lark, who, you know, his art's just, I mean, it was the perfect Silver Age style artist for the, you know, for that story.
Mhm.
And so that work got the attention of Bob Schreck, who was editing Green Lantern at the time. And
Mhm.
so that's how I got into that lane,
Mhm.
and ended up landing on Green Lantern.
Writing Kal Rayner, the greatest Green Lantern of all time.
Oh, okay, all right.
Cal's my favorite. That's
I'm
a
Hal.
that's a Hal Jordan fanboy.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I always said my favorite is Abin Sur because he brought it to Earth.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know it's a cop out. It's a way to not choose between any of the other guys.
Exactly. So what we do on the Green Lantern Sector 2814 is we've been rereading and kind of going over the stories since basically the number one of the 1990 series, and there was a lot of those issues by a writer that we don't really talk about for a lot of reasons, which I'm sure you're aware of. But yeah. So but you know, as we were going through it, you know, it was for me. Um, you know, I didn't necessarily give a lot of those issues a chance when I was reading them because, you know, hey, look what they did to my hero, right? You know,
Sure.
but it was really great going back because, you know, I get what they're doing now, and this okay, I can enjoy this, right? You know, it's fine. Um, but you know, we looked at, you know, Ron Mars's arc. We looked at, you know, which was 6-7 years, you know, on the title, and then
Yeah.
then Judd Winnick's, you know, work on the book, and then we got to your run on the book, and we're like, okay, hey, you know, we're doing this. And one of the things that we kept coming back to was, surely he knows, you know, when did editorial know that, you know, the book was going to get canceled? Because we're like, wait a minute, you know, because your run ends on a cliffhanger, right? And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, cool. And then we realize the next issue is something else entirely. And we're like,
by Ron Mars again. Yes,
by Ron Mars. You were like, what the heck's going on here? And which led to you responding, I think, to Phil, you know, on Twitter, like, no, you did not know. And I don't necessarily want to get into that, but from the reader standpoint, it I'm sure you've read what, Skylark of Space, the Lensman books by Doc Smith.
I have not.
You have not? Oh,
No.
This is really cool then. Okay.
Oh.
One of the things that it's golden age sci-fi.
Yeah.
You know, so it's,
I mean, I know of it, but like I've never read it.
It's problematic in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong, it really is. But one of the things that the main character of the Lensman does is he infiltrates these criminal organizations, and because he's so good at his job, goes up in the ranks, and then he takes them down, and he keeps working up. It's really, but it really struck me the similarities with what you kind of had Kyle doing during your run, and I was like, I'm wondering if there's something similar here. So I finally get to ask that question, and the question is no. Okay, great.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fine. I haven't read my run in forever. All my comics are at the back of a storage space that I can't access because I got too many action figures. So I bought my own run back, and I just reread it a couple weeks ago. The premise of it was literally stated by Kyle, where he's like, it's Star Wars meets Donnie Brasco. Like he's in the letter he sends home in issue 170 to everyone. Like that was exactly how it came out. Not knowing about the Lensman element. So you know, serendipity.
So I mean, you were working on a longer arc. I mean, obviously, we know you were, because that you just don't end the way it ended.
Can I just hazard a guess is you did not get a lot of notice when your run was coming to an end? Because I've heard this from other comic writers, so it would not surprise me that you're just like, oh yeah, by the way, next issue, yeah, you're not doing it.
So how did it all happen? I don't know how it all happened behind the scenes. I can't speak to it. I just know that decisions obviously had been made that I was not privy to.
Hmm.
Bob Schreck was my editor for a bit, and then, almost halfway into it, roughly, he's like, "I'm handing it over to Pete Tomasi. You're gonna love him. He's great." But and big things are going to be happening. I was like, "Oh, cool, great. I
Big
assumed I'd
things are
be a
great.
part of that. Yeah, right. I can't wait to know what I get to do." That was not the message. That was the unspoken message. Um, so so that happens, and then I'm at Comic Con at the Hyatt Bar, and I meet someone who was going to have a hand in DC editorial that was coming in, and um, you know, the first thing they said to me was, when Bob Schreck told me you were writing Green Lantern, my question was, well, why that guy? And I was like, well, that's not a great sign. And then I said, well, because he read my Hawkman, loved my Hawkman, so he thought,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, here's another connection on the book is that Judd Winnick and I are buddies from college.
Oh,
So
okay.
we go back, and when it was time for him to sort of switch over from GL to Green Arrow, I think he very kindly was like, "Oh my God, I know the perfect guy for this, who I think would love
Yeah.
to do it, and you'll have an easy time working with, and we know each other, and so so that's how that happened. But it wasn't until I read in Wizard magazine that Hal Jordan was coming back and that Jeff was going to be bringing him back that I learned that I was no longer writing Green Lantern.
Wow.
You know
You
what?
That's
know,
You know
that's
what?
pretty freaking horrible,
I
actually.
have I've heard worse stories. I've heard from a writer who it's like they didn't even get told they were off the book, and it was just one of their friends in the office saying, "Oh yeah, they're not. They just got ready," and it's just like they didn't
Listen,
even get a word.
it all worked out in the end.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
all good,
Yeah.
right?
Oh
Like,
yeah. Rating for network television. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
you landed
it
okay. Yeah, yeah.
it turned out all
I'm
right.
not complaining. No, listen, but look, in full honesty, like, it really threw me for a while. Like, it was one of those things where I'm like, Jesus Christ, do I suck that bad? Like, was my one, really was my one run really that fucking terrible? Like, no one said anything like, you got to rewrite this, you got to do, like, it
Yeah.
wasn't, so you end up thinking, well, I'm doing a great job. I'm doing a good enough job. And I'm going to
Mhm.
be on this book for a while. And cause
Mhm.
they're not going to cancel Green Lantern, right? But, but
It seems like it's the nature of comics, just from the people I've talked to, and more.
yeah.
It's and more. It's just
Mhm.
like it seems like it turns on a dime. There's no warning. I mean, these days it seems like a lot of writers only get like a year on a book, and it's just like, okay, we're gonna reboot, new number one, new writer, and it's
Right.
just
Mhm.
Right. But again, it's like, if that's the plan, just say it's the plan.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
totally,
Mhm.
totally get it. Like, then at least you can sort of, all right, I know I'm doing a maxi series. I'm not doing an ongoing series.
Yeah. So, and I guess this is because I'm really curious. At what point? I mean, you'd planned out an arc, the Star Wars meets Donnie Brasco,
Mhm.
right? At what point were you in the arc when you ended it there with the cliffhanger ending? That it gets up. Did you have like another 9 issues, another 5, 10, 12?
That was literally a game time decision as I was writing that script.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I knew I wasn't going to be doing anything beyond that. So I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
well,
Gotcha.
how am I going to go out on what I consider a high note?
Gotcha.
And because Terry had been such an integral character to Kyle's journey, I was like, what a great way to sort of reward this character for being such a good friend, for all the trauma that they had sustained.
Uh-huh.
And what if, I mean, again, I didn't know what was going to come of it. Clearly we found out a month later that nothing came of it.
Yeah.
That how to put the ring on the finger of a gay character. Like, again,
Hmm.
this is before Alan Scott came out. This is before any of that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So
This
it was
was
like,
early 2000s, yes.
yeah, yeah. So it was a little bit of a Hail Mary. It was a little bit of a fuck you. Um, but it was definitely as I'm sitting there writing those last couple pages of that book, going, how am I going to end this? I was like, oh, I know.
Okay. See, because that was something that Phil and I we talked a lot about. We're like, did he do this? Because was this always where this was going to end? Or
No,
yeah,
it's like, oh no, yeah.
we were armchair quarterbacking this to to the nth degree, going, this is really interesting.
I mean, I mean, we
What's
were, I
going
mean,
on here?
we were glad you continued Terry's story in your run because, like,
Uh-huh.
it drives me crazy sometimes when they switch writers and like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I don't like this, this character,
Yeah.
this character's been
Mhm.
so integral, to our main character story, all of a sudden just like disappears or
No, I think
Well,
you have to off ramp the characters. I honestly believe
yeah.
that. I
Mhm.
feel very strongly about that because you know every comic is someone's first comic, and you never know where they're coming into the stream, and this is sort of the jumping on point that they think, oh well, this is how it's always been, right? Like
Yep.
this must be the foundation, and for
Mhm.
them it's at least foundational. So, also out of respect to my friend who wrote the previous run,
Yeah.
I wanted to try and do something with this sort of ensemble that he had built because I love ensemble books, I love team books,
Mhm.
and even if it isn't, even if only one of them is super powered and the others aren't, even though in this case they kind of were, uh, I, I I I wanted to explore those characters in a different way than he had done them, but still build off what he had set up.
Mhm.
The relationships he'd created and try and evolve them to something else. I didn't want Moraine and John Stewart together. Like that was something I was like, we've already got one relationship at the core of the book, which is, Kyle and Jade.
Mhm.
So it just felt like, how do I differentiate these two characters from the principals? So that was one way,
Mhm.
giving Moraine like, a little bit of the working girl storyline where she ends up then at the DEO. Like,
Yep.
you know, it's just an example.
All right, not to switch gears too much, but I don't know. No, with like rights and everything. So I know back in the day there was some kind of, I don't know which company it was. It was a smaller comic company. They printed like a comic, a Quantum Leap comic. I'm like, has there ever been any talks about doing that now? Because I'm like, you have a former comic book writer as a writer on the show. I mean, that would be the
That
man
guy's
to
a
do it.
hack. Why would anyone hire him? Um,
And
there, as far
he can make a canon to the show. He writes for the show.
as far as I know, there's been no conversations about that. The last time I worked for NBC Universal or UCP, we did a Warehouse 13 comic, which was tied in, kind
Mhm.
of tangentially to the show. Never really impacted the show. I don't know. Like I said, no one's come to me about that. No one's brought it up. It would be hard to do that while making the show, just because it is such a full time commitment.
Yeah.
But there are, it's one of those things that it's a great opportunity for lower level writers or support staff to
Mhm.
sort of get a writing credit on something and get
Yep.
published who've never been published. I know when the Berlantiverse had, some of their stuff was adapted
Yeah.
into comic form. Some of the writers that
Oh yeah,
were,
like the Arrow
got,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, they got to do that. So which again, it's really great. It's awesome. You make a little extra money. You get your name out there. It's wonderful.
Mhm.
But as for Quantum Leap, as far as I know,
Okay.
no plans.
'Cause I figure, release that between seasons. It kind of keeps the brand like fresh in people's
Sure.
minds too.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. You can also do
Well,
webisodes.
yeah.
Remember webisodes?
Well, I think I remember seeing a credit for you on a Star Trek book as well, right?
I did 3 issues of Voyager
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
for Marvel in the '90s, and then I did a Wildstorm put out like a prestige format thing where I did a story that was um, it was kind of like a sequel to the episode where Captain Sisko goes back into the body of a science fiction writer in the '50s.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
I forget what that one was called, but yeah, it was like I tried to sort of pick up where that story left off and tell something different. It was a long time ago.
Gotcha.
Oh wow. I think I found a little Christmas present in Will.
Okay.
We have a
I
friend
got
who's
like 90 of them. You
deep space
want? I
time
mean, I
fan.
can get you one.
Oh,
I
nice, nice.
but again,
Oh,
I got to get through all those action figures first.
Yeah.
Once I can read those out, I can find what box it's in.
oh my God, Will, can you imagine that? Like Lilith, happy, happy. Oh, her birthday's around in December too. Be like, oh, here, happy birthday. Not only is it a DS9 comic, it's signed. There you go. Uh, okay, here's a question I had on Comic Wise, Ben. Is there any character at Marvel or DC you did not have a chance to write that you would love to have a crack at some point? I mean, I know everyone, they say every comic writer has like a Spider-Man story or a Batman story or a Superman story.
I don't. I
No.
honestly don't. I'm the guy that doesn't. It's funny because I mean, so much has happened since I was working in comics that I'm supposed to. I have there's a journalist that I'm going to be interviewed by to talk about the Jewish side of comics and specifically Magneto and like she referenced things that happened to the character that's been retconned. I'm like, man, I don't remember half the stuff that's been happening and so I'm like, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, no, I take it back. There is one thing. God damn it. But I mean, I sort of scratched the itch with X-Men Alpha Flight, but I really would love to go back to Alpha Flight. I mean, I have just such a sweet spot for that group, and specifically the issue 1 through 12 group.
John Byrne. Yep.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, that was just magnificent.
I mean, not to pile work on you, but I mean, Marvel have been doing miniseries that are like set in the '90s for different characters. So, I mean, you don't have to do current continuity. You could write something from set in the '90s.
That's true. I suppose that's true. I mean, but like, I just don't have the entree there. Like, I mean, I'm fairly certain there's plenty of it in editorial that may not have even been born when I was working at Marvel. So, like, I'm an old man now, and I feel like, you know what, old man, just stay in your lane.
I feel you, man. I feel you.
You said you're working on. Can you tell us about it, or is it still hush hush? The comic you're working on now.
I mean, it's going to be for it's me and Derek and Pete Woods. We're working with Jeff Johns under the Mad Ghost imprint.
Oh, okay.
Image, potentially. So yeah, we're working on it. It's a sci-fi thing. It's gonna be fun.
Very cool.
Okay. I mean, once it's time, if you want to promote, I mean, please
appreciate that.
Open door.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to talk about it at a later date once we're a little further down the line. But
yeah, my email. Just hit me. Just hit me up. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, look, I love the medium, right? Like you never stop loving it, even if it stops loving you.
Yeah, and even if it breaks your heart, which I'm sure it will and it does, but we still love it.
So you'll probably say you love both, but I was gonna say, do you love TV writing over comics or vice versa? Or I mean, is it just that they're such different animals? Yeah. It's
really, but it's funny. One fuels and informs another in a way. Like I think having worked in the static visual medium of comics, and I don't mean that in a critical way. I mean just literally in that it's not. It's not moving pictures, right? Yeah. It's in the illustrated version of it. It really helps you when you sit down to draft something for live action, because you are seeing shot by shot. And again, my job is not to write the shot list for the director or it is my job is to write the story as it will be performed in sequence, once it's all cut and edited together. Having a visual training where you don't want to write 20 pages of description for a panel. You have to be economical with how you do it, and in a way that's clear and concise, so that your artist can understand. Okay, I know what they're looking for. Now let me figure out how to bring it to life, on the page. Has been invaluable in writing for television. The thing I love about writing for television is like this is the strangest thing, but it's something about the format of a screenplay that I really like, because I don't use that same format for comics. I use my older, more traditional version where I'm like thinking panel by panel. This, it's like, it's literally like you're listing it all out as you're writing it, because it just, it's formatted for you in whatever program you use. But there's just something about that when I read it and when it's done, the way it looks on a page. I don't know. There's just this an odd sort of totemistic thing that I just, at the end of the day, I enjoy seeing it like that. Oh, that's weird. I'm weird.
Nice. No, I get it. I completely get it. You probably, and I may be telling something about myself here. You probably have a font that you prefer too, right?
What is it? It's well, I mean, obviously Courier for fun, for
Yeah.
scripts, but
Yeah.
for comics, I tend to go with. It's not very sexy. It used to be. Hold on. Let me look. Let me see. Because I was working on something. This is. The fuck is this? Oh, really? Oh, I'm doing it in Helvetica now.
Helvetica. Okay.
I used to be a Times New Roman guy, and now I'm in Helvetica. That's weird, but yeah,
I've got Courier Prime is what I use. I just love Courier. That's the way
yeah.
a script is supposed to look. It's
Yes.
supposed to look
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. Will does his own Kickstarter comic, so yeah, I'm sure he has fonts. Picked
Yeah,
Wait, let
out.
me see that.
weird.
Hold that up again. Let me see that.
Crossover division. Yes.
Oh, very cool. What's it about?
I'll give you the pitch. Our stories are becoming real and threatening to fracture reality beyond repair, and only an English professor and a librarian have the smarts to save us all from an unhappy ending.
That's very cool. I love
It's
it.
a lot of
That's
fun.
awesome.
I
That's really cool.
I'll send you the PDFs if you want to read them later. But it's Kickstarter. Kickstarter is really interesting to me as a Kickstarter creator, but as a place now where lots of other already established creators are coming. We had Scott Snyder do a Kickstarter a while back. We've got Jeff Johnson. Phil and I talked to Jeff. Artist Jeff Johnson's doing a book with James Robinson, on there now, and
Yeah.
DG Chichester, I talk to him all the time. Yes.
And I think what really kind of just solidified just how powerful Kickstarter is Brandon Sanderson. I mean, that's insane, right?
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, Kickstarter actually showed some stats and everything saying he brought this many thousands more Kickstarter backers to the platform. And then guess what? Here's all the other stuff that they back too. And it's really, I think the last time I was talking to one of the Kickstarter people is that it is the category on Kickstarter that has the highest success rate. I think 70% of the projects that launch in the comics grouping category succeed, which is
that's cool.
way higher than anything else. It's the community around Kickstarter comics is really great, and there's no crossover really with, pardon the pun, with the direct market. I mean, it's two separate markets, right? But it's the people that I've talked to, it's just so freeing because, hey, we're going to do whatever we want,
Right.
and we're going to put it out there, and it's great.
Yeah, no, I think it is in a weird way a very great equalizer because it's like there is no gatekeeper. There is no one to say, no, you can't do that. It's like, no, if enough people fund it, yeah, I'm doing it.
Exactly. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's Quantum Leap creator Deborah Pratt she just launched a Kickstarter for she's doing a graphic novel called Warrior One. So everybody get out there, order.
I got to write that down. Warrior One. The number one or spelled out?
ONE spelled out.
Warrior One.
Yeah,
cool.
It's funny. Derek and I and our the publisher of our indie comic Living in Infamy have been talking about doing a Kickstarter potentially for the 20th anniversary of that.
That would be awesome.
I mean, you've already, you guys ever saw that book, but like it was the first thing I did after I was fired from Green Lantern. like that being fired from that book begat this miniseries.
I mean, you've got the work. The work's done. Throw it out there, and
I mean, a nice package though. I want to make it a special thing.
Yeah, and that's a whole other rabbit hole you can go down. We just did a hardcover of the first 4 issues, and I'm like, yeah, I got to have a ribbon. I want some spot varnish on the front. They're like, dude, somebody better stop me. I'm going to keep making
Right.
little stupid decisions. Okay.
Right. That's funny.
All right. Before we let this man go, Will, I think we can agree if he wants to use our name or the name of the podcast or anything in an episode of Quantum Leap, he is more than welcome to.
So
Actually,
Ben leaps into a podcaster talking about comics.
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. I don't think that that's any winning television there. That's a really good challenge for you guys.
Someone's trying to kill him.
There you go.
One of the things from the first season is that uh, the all bets were off on what time frames he could leap into
Yeah,
because
it
we went
doesn't have
back
to
to
be
the
his
Old West.
lifetime. It doesn't have to be his lifetime. Yeah.
Is that pretty much still on? Okay, awesome. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that vaster tapestry of history. I think that makes it grander somehow.
Is that
in
one of
my
the
mind.
one of the fun parts? Is at the beginning of a season where you like, okay, what time periods are we going to hit? This season, each episode, you have to pick a different date and like a different year.
Absolutely. I mean, without giving anything away, we've got an episode coming up that sort of goes a little further, and we don't, because we've sort of broken that barrier.
Mhm.
We don't really have to talk about it as much. It's just whether or not we'll be able to tell a good story in that context that we can produce in 7 to 8 days.
Gotcha.
Realistically, produce and make work in that time period. That's
Well, let's see. We need in comics. If you have time travel, you've got to go see dinosaurs, Abraham Lincoln, World War II. What am I missing?
Right.
And monkeys. You got to have monkeys, right?
Yeah, that's true.
All right, I am out of questions, William. Do you have any other questions for this man?
This has really been awesome. It's
Yes, thank you.
great talking to you, and thank you so much for the show. It's
Yes,
something that
yes,
both my wife and I enjoy a lot, and it's
yes.
something we look
My
forward
wife
to every
too.
week.
Yes, yes.
That's very gratifying, and I appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate you having me on to talk about comics past and the show and.
I mean, we were just excited when we thought we were going to talk comics. Then I was like,
Yeah.
oh my lord, he works on.
He's on the show we talk about every week too.
Yes. Which we do a show on. We're just like, oh, did you watch Quantum Leap? How good was it? Yeah.
That's great. So appreciate that.
And again, when you're ready to promote your comic or anything else, yeah, like I said, open door policy. You have my email. Please reach out.
Absolutely.
Or if anyone from the cast from Quantum Leap wants to talk, please send them our way.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So yes, the great Ben Raab. Thank you so much, sir. Go check out Quantum Leap. And keep an eye out for some comic he has coming out soon.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.